So like Alok mentioned, what I'm going to do today is to actually try and take you through the AI generation piece using Claude AI, right? While we're doing this demo based on Claude, what we also have, I mean, this can as well be used with either ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these agents. And in addition, what we are already having currently, kind of beta, is the whole thing built into the web application itself. That is something we can probably talk about a little bit more later when we look at the roadmap and the rest of the things.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Let me turn on my video to keep this focused. And so what you're basically seeing on screen is the Turbo Apps Builder or the Turbo Forms application, which allows you to do the drag and drop designer, right? That we were talking about. Now, what I'm also going to use today is Claude. And effectively, what we will do is 2 or 3 cycles, depending on how long it takes. One is I will basically, generate a couple of forms completely based on prompting, like how you would normally do. And then the other one will also take an example of how we can just simply upload a PDF form and get it directly converted. In the interest of time, I'll also show you a few forms that I already used a PDF and converted before the webinar. So we can take a look at the PDF and then also look at the form that was created. So let's take a very simple example for let's say, design a contact form or keep the required fields to use. So all we're doing is trying to ask the LLM to design this. Now you did notice that I started off by saying design a contact form, and then I changed that to design a contact turbo form. The reason is that a form is a very common word. So if you just say form, it's possible that Claude doesn't pick up the tool that we use for designing forms and just goes ahead and then builds something else. But the moment we do use the keyword turbo form, then it picks it up that needs to work with our tool. So all we're trying to do is, the tool that we use, and you will see that a little later, can also be embedded in, a SharePoint website or your public website, etc. So all we're trying to do is to say, hey, design a simple contact form, right? And and then we will see how that is rendered. And subsequently, I'll also show it to you on the tool itself to see how the design works. Now, what happens behind the scenes as the tool starts working is we have what's called the Model Context Protocol, right? The MCP service. This basically interfaces the agent with the backend system, which is our Turbo Forms or the Turbo Apps Builder, and allows you to then create these forms in a format that is understood by the tool and rendered. So what you see is a very simple form out here. So typically it takes the name, email, phone optional, everything else optional. And you see that the form is fairly quickly generated because it was a very simple one. Let me switch to the tool. We can just do a reload, and you'll see that there's a contact us form that was just created a minute ago. Now, this is the builder, the no-code builder that you actually see on screen. Now, what you have is a bunch of controls that you can use and then, drag and drop. So earlier, what we used to do was if you needed to design a form, then we used to use the designer to basically drag and drop fields. What you're now seeing is to get a quick start by actually designing the basic form using the AI, and then you can tweak it once you're inside. You can also check the preview, and you will see that it's a faithful rendition of what you saw there, right? A very simple form. Let's try and make this a little more interesting. Let me switch to, okay. That is, in the interest of time, I do have a prompt that I already made. Let me copy that and then I'll explain. What I'm trying to do is to create something that our customers do most of the time, which is to create a simple form to create a notification in SAP. Now, Alok mentioned that we do have a no-code workflow development platform behind this, so you can actually interface with any system based on REST APIs or a database, but we also interface with SAP pretty well. And therefore, it allows you to, create notification on the SAP plant maintenance side. So all I'm saying is please create a turbo form to create a notification. And to keep it simple, I'm just saying daytime uh, location, and then just create an equipment dropdown, right? And typically, you would actually have the dropdown getting filled with values from the SAP system. But in this case, I'm just saying, please add a few values. And then I also want to capture pictures, and therefore, add pictures, the control to, grab pictures using the camera on the phone or the web. Now, similar to what you saw last time, the unlike the contact form, in this particular case, I'm actually saying what kind of fields that I want, which is, the daytime for current, the location, equipment nodes, etc. So the builder goes ahead and then starts figuring out the schema. It looks into how the form needs to look like, and then, goes ahead and then creates that. Now, what you would also see as part of this is how do you end up trying to modify this. So let's assume that this is what we wanted, but we actually missed out something, which is we want to have a severity, right? That's a radio button, and I want to have a bunch of values out there, and then based on certain values of the user's choice, right, whether it's very high or high, I actually want to make the photo that is being captured mandatory, right? And then keep it optional for the other two values. So what I'm trying to show in this case is it's not just a simple design of the form where you have a bunch of controls, but you can also embed certain business logic into that using a prompting mechanism. So what we're saying is add another radio button control, and if the user chooses a very high or a high, then what you're seeing is to make it, mandatory in that particular case. Okay, sorry. Now, sometimes you do see that, uh, let's go back here, refresh this and see if the actual work was done. Okay, let's go back to the prompt. So I have, looks like I'm hit by the demo virus. So let's try this again. Let's try this again and let's see. Now, while this runs, let me show you something else that I wanted to do, which is I do have a bunch of PDF documents out here, right? Let me open one of them. Okay, so you see this is basically an OCR form, right? Because it's not really something that has been typed in, but it's actually a scan. And you can see that some of that is faint, and although it's a very simple form, it's still not very legible. Now, if you actually go back to the generated version of this, I think it's called the Firewatch checklist. So you'll see that it's a fairly good rendition of what we looked at, right, in terms of the actual content. Now, the way we handle the PDF definition is there are two options, right? You can actually let Claude itself perform the analysis and then do the conversion and try the creation of the form. But to keep this a little more within our control, what we actually do is to handle the entire conversion also within the platform. So Claude doesn't do the job there, but we actually pick up the PDF and then we do the conversion ourselves. Let's see if this time it worked. Okay, there we go. Hopefully we should have this in place. Okay, we can also try and move these fields up and down. So when I now click on very high, you do see that the asterisk comes up here to say that it's kind of mandatory. But the moment I make it medium or low, you would see that the photo is not necessary or a required field anymore. So these kind of conditions which are built into the forms builder is actually stuff that you can now control using a prompt, right? Let's take the PDF example that I've been speaking about, I guess, which is of more interest. So what do we do? Let's take one of the documents I have here, which is a simple one. I just downloaded off the internet, right? I think it was a work permit. So attached PDF of a work permit, create a. Now you'll immediately notice that this process of conversion of a PDF, or it could be like Alok said, an Excel or maybe a Word document, is something that is going to take much longer than the typical process. It could be 2 minutes to 3 minutes, depending on the traffic on the Anthropic side. So what happens is primarily the system uploads the PDF to our system, and then we go ahead and then do the digital representation of that form. In this particular case, what you're saying, we're still calling the Anthropic API, but it could also be an Azure Document Intelligence or Google. You could even use the open source LLMs. That's completely within the platform's configuration and control. So once the digital form of the PDF is available, then the LLM or the agent starts working on that. So when we look at Claude, right, what is the benefit that we get is all of you might have heard of the term harness, right? The agent which does the job of, okay, I have received the definition, now I need to create the turbo form. I have a bunch of tools which I can use for that. So what are the tools I need to call? Uh, at what stage do I use which tool, so on and so forth, is all controlled by what typically the technical term is harness, but you can also look at it simply as an agent. We have two choices: either use something that an Anthropic or an OpenAI is providing, which is what we're trying to do in this particular demo, right? But the other option is, once it's available within the tool, you then have the choice of which LLM to use, and the harness is completely what Unwired provides within the TurboForms application itself. So in that particular case, you would see the entire process running within the web app. Now, the only difference between the two approaches, in this particular case, you have a $20 account like what I have, and I'm basically using the same tokens that are possible as part of that. So the entire conversion process, the translation process, all of this is handled within this particular tool itself. I'm not having any additional cost to bear. The moment we look at our system trying to do that, then you would have to probably put in an API key and then end up incurring costs, which is based on the number of tokens that are used. Now, remember, these are fairly simple forms that we're trying to convert. Simple in the sense that it's a straightforward definition. It's not something that is very complicated in terms of what the LLM needs to process. So it's probably anywhere from a few cents to maybe $1 at most when you look at slightly more involved forms with 3 or 4 pages, etc. Okay, so now the whole thing is churned, and then you do get a rendering. What you also see here, which is being rendered as part of this process, is again a TurboForms embedding application that you're seeing, which is visible within Claude. Now let me open up the PDF just so you get an idea. We are done. Sorry, let me look at what we wanted to, what we are trying to convert. I think it was this one. Yeah. So there's a hot work permit, and then there's a bunch of instructions and a simple form that was there as part of this. Right now, let's look at what the end result has been. So you have the hot work permit. Let me go to the preview. So this is something I downloaded off the DFW airport site. So you do have the name, number, etc. Everything has come in, and then you have the instructions organized into nice little sections. Now, what you might see straight away is that I did not actually give any instructions other than saying, hey, just convert this, right? And it also comes in with the required signatures, etc. I'll also show you a couple of forms where there are certain conditions which are also automatically determined. Now, it took a couple of minutes to actually generate this, but as you can see, I didn't have to do any manual intervention to actually get this thing done. Now, once the form has been designed in the current form, if you feel that there is something to do, it's fairly simple then, for you to try and tweak it by maybe moving it around, right? So that you have the uh, layout being a little bit more, organized to your design requirements compared to what the tool did for you. But net, what you actually see is an output which is straight away coming from what the conversion was. I want to show you the other use case which I mentioned. So let me switch back to the PDF there. So let's look at, okay, let's look at this particular one. But I have a bunch of required equipment on this side, and then you do have an yes, no, and then, there's again a hazard identification, etc. This is what's called a safe work permit. So let's go back, and I had done this some time ago. So now comes the interesting part. I use the same prompt that you saw, right? And we can actually look at that. Let's go back, converting. Okay, let's look at this. Was it this one? Okay, this is the cold work permit. But more or less, what you will see is, again, right, the same kind of prompting that I'm using just to convert the attached work permit. Now, here's the interesting part. What you see is, the simple yes/no choices, and then you also see the conditions that are now brought in. So if you look at the actual form, let's do that again, and you'll see that there is a not applicable here, and then there is a comment below. Now, the design has automatically figured out that, hey, since this is not ticked, I keep the comment, but the moment I select that it's not applicable or known on fire, then I don't need to fill it. Likewise, you would see this here, right? The moment I check that, all the options go away. And this is something that you can't really achieve in a PDF or in a paper form, right? And then you also have the other instances where you can make a field mandatory, it is required, so a comment needs to be filled in if it's a particular value, et cetera, et cetera. Most of these things are automatically determined by the system, and you can still add. So required safety equipment, let's look at that before we proceed. So you do have that there's a tick, and then there's something where people are signing off, right? So the tool does it a lot better. That since I did this, actually it now takes who did the checking of the required safety equipment. So you do get a little more of what we call as an interactive form rather than just the static form as per the PDF. So that's basically what I wanted to quickly do in terms of two forms that we created using prompts. Then there was another form that I just dragged and drop, put in a PDF, and allowed the system to convert. And similarly, I had built out a few forms in the interest of time, like I said, and those are these particular forms, right? Where you have this work permits, the inspection templates, etc. So it really doesn't matter what kind of a form you have, whether it's an OCR form, which means it's an image that was scanned, maybe from a print, or it's a really properly designed, PDF form. It really doesn't matter for the system. Although I did the demo with PDFs, you might have as well used an Excel or a Word document, for example, and it would have done the same conversion.